Hello, welcome back to the podcast, episode number 80, and today we're going to be looking at the different types of analysis roles within a sports club. So it's probably going to be weighted more towards football because that is my area of expertise, but a lot of these roles will be applicable to different types of sports as well. We are only going to be talking about the ones within the club setting, so things like external data or technology companies, things like national governing bodies and other external organisations. We're not going to focus on them today, but obviously those are other areas where you can be employed within the analysis sector. So solely on the club setting. So before we start, I want to quickly ask you to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. If this is the type of thing you're interested in terms of working in analysis, scouting, recruitment, etc., please do subscribe if you haven't. Share the channel to anyone else that you may think will also be interested. And if Spotify is your platform of choice, you can also follow me on there. So it's not normally the platform I use, but I'm seeing some decent growth on there, so it'll be good to continue that. So if you are on there, you prefer that as your platform, then you can just hit follow on that, and that will be much appreciated. So let's get to these roles. So I think I should have counted them up before. I've got a list here of about 10, 11, maybe 12 different types of analysis roles. So we're going to start with the OG, I would call it, just the first team analyst. So this is kind of the one I think back up to when I started out in analysis. Probably the average number of analysts in a club was probably one. Some clubs didn't have any. You know, if you were lucky, you had a couple. And obviously that couple was probably made up from maybe one paid and one intern. So the first team analyst will be somebody that is attached solely to the first team, and they'll do a lot of preparing and debriefing of games. So this role actually touches on a lot of the other roles as well. So it's kind of interesting to see that what was typically one role maybe 10 years ago has kind of expanded out to all of these other roles I'm going to speak about. So obviously that means you can do a hell of a lot more analysis. You can kind of deep dive into a lot more topics in a lot more detail. So some will think that is overkill. But I think for what clubs are trying to achieve these days and what's kind of at stake, I don't think that is overkill at all personally. But yeah, it's interesting to see that kind of the one role that was back in the day has expanded into so many roles. So that first team analyst would have typically, they would obviously been close with the coaching staff, so they would have prepared for games by watching opposition. They would be there on match day. They would, ensure the pre-match presentation is kind of prepared and kind of presented, and they would probably be filming or coding live. They would then, after the game, do the coding, do the post-match, make sure there's kind of a post-match presentation ready for the manager, work closely with the manager and the coaching staff, and they are basically there to help the first team win games. And they might also obviously incorporate data into their reports and stuff like that. But yeah, they will solely be the first team. So one thing I did say when I was describing that role was they'll do some opposition stuff. So that is where we're going to lead on to number 2, and that is solely the opposition analyst. So again, like I mentioned, it would have been something that would have been part of the first team analyst role, and it still maybe is in a lot of clubs, but many clubs will have a specific opposition analyst. So this person will not really be at the home games for the team that they work for example. They'll already be focusing on the next opponent. So let's say going back to my team, if I was the opposition analyst for Sunderland, I probably wouldn't be live coding the Sunderland games. I would be watching the next opposition or working on the preparation and the presentations, etc., and the planning for the next game, which could be, in a lot of cases, it could be in 2 or 3 days. So the opposition analyst is someone that would just focus solely on the upcoming fixtures, and again, they would use data in that, I'm sure. They might then lean on other people within the club that are more data inclined, but this is where the whole department would come together. So the first team analyst and the opposition analyst would obviously work together and have lots of conversations and share kind of ideas and stuff. But the opposition analyst in this case is going to be someone that will focus solely on the next fixtures and what's upcoming. So if you are wanting to dive deeper into each of these, what I'm going to do is I'm going to link some episodes down below, because I've obviously had a lot of different analysts on this channel and interviewed them in different roles. So like, for example, the ones we've spoke about so far, first team analysts and opposition analysts, there's loads of people that have been on this channel and been interviewed by me that have been in them roles. So things like MLS analysts, so I've had a couple from the MLS, Premier League analysts, and a lot of those analysts have spent periods of time solely being an opposition analyst. So we'll go into kind of how they think about preparing for games, how they watch a match from that perspective of planning a post-match report, for example. So that's first team analyst, opposition analyst, that's 2. The next one we're going to go on to is set piece analyst. So again, this would have been something that the sole first team analyst would have done, but now it's becoming a lot more popular and clubs are employing specific set piece or set play analysts. So these people would typically cover all types of set play. So that would include free kicks, corners, throw-ins, goal kicks, restarts. We're seeing some funky restarts, kickoffs, where teams just literally go for territory or boot it straight into the opposition box. So anything that basically from a dead ball, that is where this person will come alive. So throw-ins and stuff like that. So I have had a couple of set piece analysts and people linked to this on the channel as well. So we've had the first one going back a while would have been Thomas Gronemark, who is the throwing coach. You probably know Thomas has worked at Liverpool before. We've had Yannick Ouvrard, who was at Anderlecht at the time. He's now at Brighton, and that was really interesting to see his perspective and how he works as a sole set piece coach or set piece analyst. So yeah, there's plenty if you want to dive deeper into that one. But I think this one's really interesting because I think, and I've mentioned this on previous episodes with other guests, it seems that set piece, or at least kind of corners and stuff, it's like a circle, like they're coming back in fashion almost. So if you think back to kind of Sam Allardyce, Tony Pulis and stuff, long throws especially, that's also another topical thing. They are being seen, a lot of clubs in the Prem now opting to do a long throw, which back when I think back to the Stoke days and stuff like that, it was seen as a bit, you couldn't play football. Like the teams that weren't as fancy footballing teams, like your Arsenals, wouldn't typically be so reliant on long throws or corner techniques and stuff like that. But obviously, it's quite ironic now that Arsenal are known as a very good set piece team. They put a lot of time and effort into the corners and stuff like that. They score a lot of goals. So it's surprising that it was seen that way anyway, I think, because there's so many goals scored from set plays. I don't know the exact percentage, but around a third of goals are scored from set plays. So it makes sense for a team to employ someone solely to focus on that. If they can eke out another 5 goals a season and stop, another 5 being conceded, then that's going to have a big swing in your league position and points tally and all of that sort of stuff. So 3 down. The next one, so we've got first team analyst, opposition analyst, set piece analyst. The next one is going to be coach analyst. So again, this is another kind of new-ish one. And it goes back to the point of kind of the lines between a coach and an analyst being even more blurred over time. So like now, if you're going to go on a coaching badge, for example, if you're going to do coaching qualifications, you'll find that there's parts of that which encompass analysis. So modern day coaches nowadays are coding games. They'll have their own software. They'll be able to code games, and that's part of their role as a coach. And then a coach analyst, I would say, is kind of that hybrid, that in between. They will do some analysis. They'll be on the laptop and do the traditional coding, but they will also be out on the grass. They will then be closer to the actual sessions. They might then be able to use the analysis to guide sessions, and they might be delivering these sessions as well. Typically, the coach analyst would normally be qualified as a coach as well. Obviously, if they're working in a high-level club in that coaching position, they would typically do that. But I've spoke to different ones actually. So I've spoke to people that are now in coach analyst roles that have basically started out as an analyst, and then they kind of worked their way up and then did their qualifications, the coaching qualifications, but always were solely an analyst first. But then I've had a totally opposite of that. And an example being someone that's been on the podcast recently, George Lawty. He worked as an analyst, but he would always seen himself as a coach. So predominantly he was a coach, learned the analysis skills, and then basically brought them together as the coach analyst. So this one is typically one, from what I've seen anyway, not always the case, but maybe someone that is, or it was at least in George's case, that they've had that kind of connection with the head coach, for example. So George worked closely with Luke Williams, who he worked with at Bristol, Notts County and Swansea. So it's that kind of trust and connection between the head coach and the other coaching staff, and the coach analyst being one of them. So yeah, first team analyst, opposition analyst, set piece analyst, coach analyst. Next one being the individual player analyst. So not every club will have this particular role. This is basically where the analyst will work closely with players on a more of a one-to-one basis. So you will get this anyway, like coaches do, pull players aside and they will work with players, but some clubs will employ specifically a individual analyst, and they'll have that more of that one-to-one time with the players. So this could be at both first team level, but also I've seen it quite a few times in the academy setting. So, an individual analyst for the under 16s to 18s, for example, and then that will allow the younger players to have more time spent with the analyst they're learning more about their role and they're hopefully developing better as a player. I don't think I've had an individual player analyst on the podcast, so maybe that's one for the future. But yeah, again, they're all very similar in terms of, you're still analysing I suppose you're analysing players, but if you're analysing players, you're also analysing the team, but you're just focusing more solely on that individual aspect of it, the actual player itself, rather than the team as a collective. So the next one we're going to go on to, and this is topical, so I think, which we will come on to later in the episode, is going to be the next episode. So episodes next week is with a goalkeeper analyst. So that is what we're going to move on to next. So this one's pretty obvious. The clue is in the name. You are going to be basically responsible for analysing all of the aspects linked to goalkeeping, basically. So as I mentioned, there's an episode coming out next week, so that will explain the role a hell of a lot better than I'm going to explain it now. But just to give a quick kind of overview and recap, so this person will focus on kind of restarts from the goalkeeper. They will kind of tailor a lot of the other roles specific to the goalkeeper. So for example, they might do opposition analyst, but from a goalkeeper perspective. So the goalkeeper will want to know who they're coming up against. So let's say you're playing Man United next. What goals and what chances do that team usually create, so the goalkeeper can be prepared for that? So do they put a lot of crosses into the box? Do they, go to the byline and cut back and then shoot from kind of that kind of area? So that would be one aspect of the goalkeeper analyst position, but also it would probably cross into the kind of coach analyst role as well, but just focusing solely on the goalkeeper. So you might be out with them on training, you might be filming training, you might be looking at the other goalkeepers within the club, so not just the first team goalkeepers, the academy goalkeepers, any goalkeepers that are out on loan. You might be helping with the recruitment of goalkeepers, which again comes onto the recruitment analyst, which we haven't got to yet. So you can see how these are all kind of intermingled, but this one specifically on the goalkeepers in the club. So that's all you would be focused on. So obviously with that one, you would be working closely with the goalkeeper coaches, maybe obviously the set piece coach, that would make sense, and then the other analysts. So I have a little intro teaser of the next episode, so that's really interesting. So definitely I'll link that one when it does go live, but that is with Adam, who is the goalkeeper analyst at Huddersfield, which I found really interesting because Huddersfield are League One, so they have, there's Premier League teams and Championship teams which don't even have a goalkeeper analyst, but I think it's so it's good to see them investing in that. But I think obviously their manager is an ex-goalkeeper as well, so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. But yeah, that's the next episode. Definitely check that out if you want to learn more about the role of the goalkeeper analyst. Okay, let me take a ref. So first team analyst, opposition analyst, set piece analyst, coach analyst, individual player analyst, goalkeeper analyst. What's that? 6. So perfect. Before we get on to the next one, I want to just quickly mention Implay Online, who are the sponsors of this video. So as you know, I'm involved with Implay. That is my main day-to-day job. Implay Online is a cloud-based video analysis software. So it's linked down below. So if you want to kind of have a affordable solution to be able to code games, tag games, create playlists, draw on videos, and then definitely check them out. As I mentioned, link down below. So if that's your thing, that's more linked to the role of the video analyst. But yeah, check that out if that is for you. So let's continue with this list of roles. What do we have next? We have a academy analyst. So the academy analyst is, again, it's one which might cover a lot of what I spoke about, but just in the academy setting. So the academy analyst typically is, not always, but somewhere, or at least I did as well, started out in the academy. And the reason why a lot of people do that is because it's a lot less pressure. It's a good environment for you to learn. And it's a little bit different, the balance of kind of competitiveness. Obviously, academies still want to win, but there's a more of a focus on development. And it's more of an environment where you can make more mistakes as you are learning. So yeah, that's where a lot of people will start. And obviously there's more academy analyst positions, just out of the fact that each academy has probably got sort of 8 to 10 teams. So if you think the different age groups, typically each one of them would have someone doing the analysis. So, and this all comes down to like the EPPP, so the classification of academies within England. So obviously if you're a category 1 academy, you will employ more analysts than if you're a category 3 academy. These roles can be a mixture of, actually that's a good point. So this particular role of the academy analyst can be split up into a couple of different ones. So you usually have a head of academy analyst. So that will include still normally you'll be attached to, say, the 21s or the 18s, but then you'll oversee the other people within the department. So you've got the academy analyst, and then this is where also you'll have more casual roles. So people that are at university and they're looking to kind of get into their first role, it might be you might help out and do more on a casual basis, like an internship or something like that with an academy team. So you would be doing a lot of the same things as you would with the first team as you get up the age groups in terms of kind of opposition. You wouldn't typically do much opposition analysis for, say, the under 10s. That would be more a case of kind of, like I say, developing the particular players themselves. So you'd be coding them and feeding them back with the coaches and ensuring they're going through the correct development pathway that you want them to. But as the age groups get higher, the players are getting closer to the first team. So essentially the department would then look to mould the older ages closer to so that there's not much of a change from if you're an 18s player. When you go into the first team, it's not just totally different. So you build up to doing more opposition analysis and kind of get into that routine of what the first team would have as you're in them older age groups. I probably butchered that, explained that terribly wrong, but yeah, that's what the academy analyst is. So it's different roles, and like I say, some academies, Cat 1 academies, they might have, I don't know, let me think, they might have 10 analysts that work across the different age groups. So some will have one each, some share different age groups, some swap the different age groups. So there's plenty of roles going, and this is typically, like I say, because there's more of them, where a lot of people do start out. And that's not to say that it is a stepping stone. Some people prefer to work in the academy. It is a different role. Like I mentioned, there's more of an emphasis on development than winning, and some people prefer that. But some people will, use that as their first step, get their foot in the door, and then maybe move up to the first team. So that's the academy analyst. So I believe I've had a couple of academy analysts on actually. So I'm just trying to think now. We've had Matty Owen, who at the time was at Borough, but he's moved to Man City now. That's one off the top of my head. I should have the list of previous guests up as well, but I don't. So I'm just going from memory here. So if I miss one, again, check them all out, all the episodes. There'll be someone else in there, I'm sure. So the next one is a training analyst. So this is, again, one, I don't see this too often. Not all clubs will have a training analyst, but, a lot of training nowadays is filmed, and whether it's from somebody actually filming it with a camera or the fixed cameras that a lot of the top academies and top training grounds have installed now. So a lot of the training is captured anyway, and a lot of that back in the day probably wouldn't have been reviewed or analysed just due to time. So if you have someone that is solely on the kind of, their focus is a training analyst, they can make a hell of a lot more use of all of this training footage, and then it would come down to probably working closely with the coaches and designing what sessions want to be done and how those sessions are delivered and recorded, etc. I will admit I don't know too much about this role. I haven't done this role myself, and I don't think I've had a training analyst on the podcast either, so maybe that's one for the future. So maybe if you are a training analyst, get in touch, leave a comment below. Be good to learn more about your particular role. So training analyst is number 9 maybe? I don't know, we'll go with number 9. So I missed one out actually, that's why I got confused. So I've missed out a recruitment analyst. So this role can be split into a couple of different ones probably. So recruitment analysis is something that I did for half a season when I was with Brighton. I've mentioned this in previous episodes. So this is where you are basically, you're more part of the recruitment team than I don't know, that's subjective really. So the analysis work that you're doing is basically linked to all of the players that are coming in. So you might then watch potential signings on video and, clip them out, create dossiers, create presentations. You'll be reviewing stats on the different kind of, the different products now that clubs have available to them, the stats of all the players from around Europe and all that. You'll be basically in that section of work in terms of who fits the criteria for the different players your club wants to bring in. You'll be working closely with the scouts. But then the reason I mentioned this role can be split into different roles because you've got things like a scouting analyst, so that, or like a scouting coordinator maybe, I suppose that kind of overlays as well. So clubs will obviously have various different scouts, whether they're domestic or overseas. It's someone's role to basically manage them, send them to the games, collate the reports, and ensure that, because obviously all of those reports, that's all data basically. So every single scouting report that a scout has submitted on a player or group of players is a piece of data. So to have someone that's able to manage and get the best and get the most information from that is where the kind of scouting analyst, recruitment analyst comes in. But then also on the recruitment side of things, I've seen a few clubs have a specific loans analyst as well. So this would be both for incoming and outgoing players. So if you're in a club and you're a loans analyst, you will basically, your role would look at the different players that your club has out on loan. So obviously you might have 10 players out on loan in various different leagues around the world. So you'll be making sure that they're getting analysed properly. But then you also might be looking at people that the club is looking to bring in on loan as well. So that's why it kind of overlaps with the recruitment analyst, I would say. So recruitment analyst, bit of a bonus one because it splits out into scouting analyst / scouting coordinator, but also that loans analyst as well. Okay. Next one I'm going to go on to is what I've seen some clubs have is a GPS analyst. So this is a little bit more on the sports sciencey side in terms of kind of the GPS units that they'll, well, I don't know why I pointed at my chest, I meant my back. In terms of what the players will use, obviously all of that data is collated from every training session and every match in terms of their distance covered, speeds, heart rate, all of that sort of stuff. Again, I'm not going to pretend I know all what's covered these days because that's not my area of expertise, but all of that data needs analysing. So this, like I mentioned, is more of a sports sciencey role, but I have had someone on actually which was very much in the weeds in this, and that was Ariane, who was, he's not at Wolves, I don't know where he's gone, but he was at Wolves at the time, and he was a kind of sports scientist and data analyst. So he used a lot of this GPS data in his daily kind of workflow. So if you want to learn more about that and what Arian gets up to in his role, or he did in his previous role, then that is definitely a episode to check out. So yeah, we'll move on because I don't know too much about that one. That is definitely not my area of expertise. So the next one is and this again can be split into various roles, but I'm just going to class it as one, is a data analyst. So you can obviously have a data analyst, data scientist, data engineer. A lot more of these data roles are cropping up now at clubs. Some clubs will employ their own data personnel. Some will just prefer to outsource it to a consultancy company, for example. And the reason they might do that is because they don't have the capacity to hire, a data team in-house. It might cost too much. They might not be able to afford the level of expertise that they want, but also they might not know what they actually want. So the fact that they can just go to a consultancy company, pay a fee to have a team of data analysts work on the project that they want to do, and then they can just kind of scale it up and scale it down as and when they need it. So the data analyst, like I said, obviously I've had lots of data analysts and data scientists on the channel in the past. So off the top of my head, who have we had? We've got Sam Gregory, who is the director of data at US Soccer, so that's a really good one, so check that one out. We've had Sam, who was at Norwich at the time, data analyst or data scientist at Norwich. Tom Warville, Sarah Rudd, there's loads. So definitely check those ones out if you want to learn more about that. So and this is where these roles are definitely, they vary across different things. So you've got kind of the database and the kind of, well, you've also got kind of machine learning and AI and stuff now as well. But then you've got like the visualizations, which will then be used in dashboards as well and stuff like that. So there's lots of different things that you can kind of fall under this heading of kind of data personnel within a club. And we're going to come on to some actually, because we're going to go through some current jobs as I usually do in these episodes. And there's a couple of interesting ones that are specifically on data. So we'll jump into the actual job description and see what they're actually asking for. So I think that's my list done in terms of the roles. So just a quick recap: we've got the first team analyst, opposition analyst, set piece analyst, coach analyst, individual player analyst, goalkeeper analyst, academy analyst, recruitment analyst, training analyst, GPS analyst, and a data analyst. Lots of different analysts in there. So hopefully, if you're interested in analysis, you want to work in a club, there's somewhere for you to fit in, hopefully, from that whole list there. So what we'll do now is we'll jump to some actual jobs, like some current jobs that are actually on the market right now, and we'll mention them. So obviously I mentioned the last episode with just myself was 2 weeks ago, so I'll try not to go back too far and repeat ones. We'll just look at jobs that these. So the ones I'm going to read out have been posted literally in the last week, I would say. So let me start here. So what we got on, and I'm just getting this from the APFA and the ASPA website, so you can check these out as well. So in the last week, so on the APFA website we have Academy Performance Analyst Lead at Derby. So there's your academy analyst. We've got a casual academy analyst at West Brom. We've got a few first team analysts here. We've got first team analyst at Dundee United. We've got first team analyst at Oxford United. We've got an analyst at Woking, that's unpaid, so that's like an internship. We've got a first team analyst at Tottenham, so that's a really good job for someone. And we've got a first team analyst at Barnsley. So there's a few different first team analysts there in that little lineup. And then if I go to ASPA, we have a data analyst at Sheffield United. So let me just click into this one. Let's see what this one is looking like. What we got here, so it tells you a little bit about what they are looking for, essential criteria. So a degree in mathematics, statistics, computer science or related field, a strong experience with Python, hands-on knowledge of machine learning techniques, proficiency in SQL for data extraction and transformation, experience building clear and engaging data visualizations using tools such as Power BI, Tableau or Streamlit, and then familiarity with football data sources. So that's the Sheffield United one. Again, there's more information, so you can go on there. So if you're interested in this, maybe you're not ready for this role right now, but if you want to be a data analyst within a football club in 2 years' time, you can look at these job descriptions, see what they're looking for, and make sure you're filling any gaps that you have in your skill set. So that's a data analyst at Sheffield United. We've got there's a lot more different ones on this website, on the ASPA one. So we've got a regional scout consultant at Burnley. I'm not going to repeat the same ones from the other one. We've got one for Hockey Australia, men's performance analyst. If you're into your hockey, there's one there. We've got a recruiting officer at, I don't know what that one is, Sydney, I'm not actually sure, Sydney Swans. So there we go, Sydney Swans. There's a different one for you. Sports scientist at Paracycling. We've got a data scientist at basketball data scientist, Sacramento Kings. Football data analyst at Indianapolis Colts. There's some really good ones on here. Miami Marlins are looking for a tech scouting coordinator, data scientist at Tampa Bay Lightning. Wow, there's quite a lot of data roles. So first team scout Tottenham, technical scout Tottenham. These are all in the last week as well, by the way. So if you want to go onto these websites yourself and check them out, then you're more than welcome to. And then the one that I wanted to click on again on this one is head of data and analytics at Wigan Athletic. So let's actually look at this one just to see a bit more about what these guys are looking for. So they're looking to appoint a highly skilled head of data analytics to lead the football data and to drive strategic direction for data science initiatives across all football operations. So it's a key leadership role. Let me go down. Let's see what they're looking for, see if it's any different to that Sheffield United one. So what we're looking for, so proven experience in a senior data analysis or scouting role in professional football, deep understanding of recruitment processes, performance metrics and football data, for example, XG, XA, defensive action, etc. Proficiency in things like Python, R, SQL, Excel. Experience building dashboards, Power BI, Tableau, again similar. Experience working with football scouting software. Strong leadership, communication and presentation skills. So this one looks to be a bit more of a senior role, potentially, I'm not sure. And then passion for football and all of that sort of stuff. So again, there's a hell of a lot more information than I've just read out. So if you want to look into those a little bit more detail, you can do that in your own time. So what we're going to do next, before we wrap this up, I want to mention that the next week's episode I mentioned is goalkeeping analyst. So I'm going to play the little introduction. So if you are still here, I appreciate you watching this episode. And as a thank you for that, here's a little teaser for the next week's episode, which I highly, highly recommend.
And the goal, for instance, will be anything, shots from close, shots on angle, shots from distance, anything that's like reactions and deflections, that type of stuff. Best practice stuff. So we're always sending each other clips and having little discussions around, did you see this save that Edison made, or he may want it in line with where the ball's coming in from, so we can see the movements that the keepers are taking. So I'll be in discussion with whoever's on the radio, and it may just be little bits of in possession, if the goalkeeper can affect it a bit more, if there's a bit of, if we can expose them from goal kicks, if we can, I don't know, play straight into a fullback or something, try and catch them out, and whether it's in swingers, out swingers, again, how that may affect us as the goalkeepers. Do we think it's a type of situation where we want to be coming for the cross, or is it something that we go, actually, we'll just let the centre-backs deal with it? That's a horrible penalty to have to face, because like you said, you can't go early because he'll just roll it in the other corner, so you have to really hold your nerve and wait as long as you can. There's bodies in front of him and he can't see, he's maybe gone slightly out of position so he can actually see the ball, which may put him out of the perfect position. But
okay, so that's next week. So that is Adam at Huddersfield Town, the goalkeeper analyst. And then this week, as you're watching it, hopefully if you're watching it as it comes out, there's still time to submit questions for another guest which I'm recording this week, and that's Thomas Spring. Thomas is in a recruitment role in Saudi at Al Ettifaq. So if you want to submit a question on scouting or the football in Saudi, then that's the one to do it for. So you can do that in the usual way. Send me a DM on LinkedIn, send an email and all that sort of stuff. And I want to thank actually link down below is a link to my email newsletter. Lots of you have kind of been replying and asking questions and stuff on there because I've kind of started that up again. So it's good to actually get responses from people on that. So if you're not already signed up on that, that goes out every single Monday. So the episode drops Monday morning, and then I'll send out an email newsletter on the Monday afternoon. So again, totally free. We just kind of dive deeper into different analysis topics. So yeah, you can sign up down below, and you can also reply to them and kind of get in touch with me if you would like to do that. And then one other final thing which I will bring up is, if you do have any video suggestions for upcoming episodes, then feel free to drop them as well. The reason I say that is because of one, I think it might have been a YouTube comment. So, and again, I don't have the name, but thanks for whoever left this, was the question about, do I think AI will eventually replace the role of the analyst? So quite topical and linked to this particular episode where I've gone over all of the different roles. Now, I did reply to that comment and mention that in short, I don't think AI will replace the role of the analyst, but I do think it's going to change it. So I'm going to probably do a bit more of a detailed dive into it and to answer that question properly. So I'm interested to hear what other people think as well. So do you think, or how do you think AI is affecting the role of the analyst? Will it change it? Will it eradicate it? What will the role of the analyst look like in 5 or 10 years? So really interesting thing to think about. But other than that, that is everything for this episode. So hopefully you enjoyed and find value from that. Quick reminder also, and again, if you haven't already subscribed, that would be very much welcomed if you can hit the subscribe button or hit the follow button on Spotify. But other than that, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll catch you next week.